Okay. So our second share on Bava Kama, basically we discussed the four main categories of damages. Now, we discussed it in a very basic way. Shor, bar, mava, and hever. Right now, before we go further in the Gemara, and the Gemara is going to talk about it further in great depth, I want to show where we see it from the Psukim. Where does the Gemara get it from? I want to read a few paragraphs in Parshas Mishpatim. Parshas Mishpatim is the parsha in the Torah that discusses these things at length. That's where everything comes from. And the Gemara obviously will be always going back to the text of the Torah to see where we see the whole concept of damaging, where we see the whole concept of somebody, of the different types of damaging and what they're obligated, etc. Okay, so if we look at the text, we'll be able to see some things just coming out at us right away. Okay, so Parshas Mishpatim starts out discussing the laws of a slave and how the rights that a slave has and how you have to set him free and when you have to set him free. Then it discusses a person hitting his parents, a person cursing his parents, a person hits another person. So there's many different things that are discussed in many things discussed in terms of damages in Parshas Mishpatim. However, what we're going to focus on now is not a person damaging another person. That we'll discuss some other time. Let's jump. Before I start Gemara today, I want to take a look at the Parshas Mishpatim. So it's going to be Shmos, right? Shmos Perek Chof Aleph, Pasuk Chof Ches. Okay, 21-28. Now, Harav Paul, you want to look at it here? You might even have it in the beginning. They might even. I don't know if there's a English here. With English you want?
Yeah.
I don't know if there's an English here.
It's okay. You go ahead.
Okay. Right. So if you see from the beginning of the parsha, we have a first paragraph right here. Right. I'm sure the screen is sharing. It should be here and should be on the recording too. Right, we have the first 6 psukim talking about an eved, right, a slave, and how you have to the laws of slavery, and then a woman slave, if someone sells his daughter, etc. Someone hits a person, makeish vamet, he's going to be put to death. Hits his parents, kidnapping, cursing his parents. Also, he's chayev misa. Okay, if someone hits a slave had a different status back then. If 2 people start fighting and then they happen to hit a pregnant woman, all the cases, if someone hits a slave, fine. Then we get to Pasuk Chavchet. Perek Chaval Pasuk Chavchet says like this: V'chi yigach shor et ish o et isha v'met. If a shor, right? If an ox gores a man or a woman, and then the man or woman dies, sakol yistakel ashor, the ox should be stoned, v'lo ya'achel et besaro, and you can't eat its flesh, right? Which means obviously you can't get hana'ah, you can't get benefit from this. Uba'al hashor naki, and then the owner is innocent. The owner is free. Meaning, once we stone the animal, we sort of punish the animal. We'll see this is discussed. Why do we care about the animal? Why is the animal, right? The animal obviously is what caused the death of the person, right? But now, is the animal considered to have, it's responsible, that it should be put to death? We'll see why, right? But the point is what we're saying is that the person is exempt, right? Let me just switch to Sefaria because over here it has the English. Hold on a second. Right, so right over here in this case, we're talking about when the ox that belongs to a person damages a person, right? He's not damaging money, he's damaging a person. here. Here we go. Okay, so now the pasuk introduces to us the famous thing called a muad. A muad. What's a muad? A shor muad is an ox that has gored more than one, multiple times. V'im shor nagachum mitamol shalom. If it's an ox that gores from yesterday or 3 days ago, v'huad b'volav lo yishmireno, and the owner was warned and he has failed to guard it. Then he caused a man or woman to be killed. So then, besides for the ox getting killed, but also be'alav, even the owner, yumat, even he should be put to death. Now, we learn out, this doesn't mean actual death. It means he has to pay, he has to compensate the family of the person who died for the monetary value of the damage that he caused. And that's the next verse. Im kofer yishvat alav. If a ransom is laid upon him, meaning instead of being put to death, the owner will pay for it. Minatan pidyon nafsho. He'll have to redeem the nefesh of the person who he died. Just as the court puts on him. Okay, continues the pasuk, whether it's a son or a daughter, a minor, right? This is what you have to do. If it's a slave, this is what you have to do. Fine. So over here we saw the first time the Torah is talking about a ox damaging, which is what we called last week shor, right? And the Torah makes a very specific distinction. If it's an animal that was not expected to have been, goring, right? And it did anyway, right? So then the owner is not responsible. However, if it's an animal that was warned, that we've seen him gore, right? We've seen him gore before. How many times? Maybe 3 times, maybe 4 times. We'll see exactly, right? But we've seen him gore. He's called a muad, which means that he is prone to already be a damager. Therefore, you have more of an obligation to protect him, right? So therefore, the owner is responsible even more. He has to actually compensate for the monetary damage, not just that the ox gets killed. Okay, so but that is discussing specifically an ox, which means my money, my ox, which my possession, he belongs to me, that kills a person, that damages a person, right? Fine. That's the first time we discuss shor. Next time, when we look at pasuk 33. Shalom, shalom. Let's say pasuk number 33, Lamed Gimel. V'chiftach ishbor. You have it, Paul? Mm-hmm. Before today's daf, I'm just going to go through the psukim in Parshas Mishpatim. That's where the introduction to the whole concept of the damages. Okay, so if you want to follow from a chumash, we get you a chumash, or if you want to follow from the screen.
There is not article downstairs.
Oh, okay. You want to get it?
Find it?
On the third shelf from the top, on the right side, in the corner.
Do you want me to get it for you?
Do you have other people on
Yeah.
Yes, please, but then apologize on my behalf to the people.
Okay, I'll be back in a second. In the meantime, Paul, please converse with these people.
Aha! Hello, people.
Hello, Pasha.
Как жизнь?
Слава Богу, все нормально. How are you?
Хорошо.
Okay. Fix the camera a little bit.
Hmm?
Because you're like in the bottom. I can see only your chin. I mean, your chin almost in the cutoff point. That's better.
Он не хочет больше ничего показывать сегодня.
Я могу
Ну, слушай.
вдвойне показаться.
О. Слушай, это уже как-то серьезно, уже книги за тобой даже делают. Это умный вид получается везде.
Так, а
Нормально.
зачем тебе твой телефон, если ты там, anyway?
Я хотел посмотреть, кто есть. А то...
Ну, хотел посмотреть на себя со стороны.
Да.
Он за нами следит, я понял. Окей. Слушай, хорошо, кто-то за нами следит. Кто-то учит,
Нет, он
кто-то за
сам
нами
за...
следит.
Ты не понимаешь, он сам за тобой. Хотел посмотреть, в какой степени он красивый, умный.
I converse with you.
Okay, back to
Okay.
English. Back to
I
English.
mean, that's much
Back to
better.
regularly scheduled programming.
Gotcha. Okay, coffee breaks over.
Okay.
Okay, so we just read the first pasuk about shor. Right now, in the next one the Mishnah mentioned was the arba avos nezikim, the four primary cases of damaging is the shor, the bar, the mav, and the hever. Right. So first we had the axe and then the bar. What does it say in the pasuk now? V'chiftach ish bar. A person digs a pit. Right. Pasuk lamed gimel. So Shmos, Exodus 21:33. Are you showing the page? Okay, good. So v'chiftach ish bar, o ki chre ish bar. If someone opens or digs a pit, v'lo yichasen and he doesn't cover, v'nafal shama shor o chamor, and then a ox or a donkey falls in, right, and obviously gets damaged. Baal habor yishalem. Then the owner of the pit must pay kesef yeshiv duel. He must pay back the money to the owner. V'amet yelo, and then the dead body will belong to him. Who's him? Simply means the person who now owns the bar, right? I pay for your donkey and I keep the carcass. Make sense? Okay, we'll see. Now,
What do you do with it?
what?
You eat it? What do you do?
Carcass?
Yeah.
Feed to the dogs. Yeah. I mean, it's worth money, right? So you could do it. You could do it in two different ways, right? I could either say, "Here, take your carcass," right? You can write I'm responsible for your dead donkey. Okay, take that. What's that worth? Deduct it from the original value, and I'll pay you the difference, right? Or you just say, "No, pay me. I had a full live donkey. Compensate me for what I had, and then you keep the difference. You keep right."
And you worry about digging it out from the pit.
Exactly. Well, I want this bother over here. I need to have a dead donkey. I'm not interested, right? Okay. So that was bar. Now, the pasuk continues and goes back to shor again. But this time, it's not discussing shor in terms of damaging a person. It's discussing shor in terms of damaging another ox. And that's really what our mission is talking about. V'chi yigof shor et ish. V'chi yigof shor ish et shor eyu. If a shor of a man, yigof. Yigof, we'll see what it means, but literally means pushes. Okay, literally the word yigof would mean he pushes another shor eyu, an ox of your friend, v'meit, and then the ox dies. What do? You're liable, right? However, umacheru et hashor achai, you sell the living ox and you split it in half. And also the dead body they split, which means over here, what it's saying is you only pay half the amount that I damaged. Okay, so right away we have here a interesting law that even though my ox gored your ox and killed it, I only am responsible for half the ox. Okay, so we take basically what this pasuk is describing is, let's assume that they're both equal. Okay, let's suppose they're both equal, both worth $200, right? So we split both of them. We split the live one and we split the dead one, and we say you take half of mine, right? Whatever the dead one's worth now, right? We also split that. We split the difference. So let's say it goes down from being worth 20 down to 10, down to from $200 down to $20, right?
Doesn't make sense. Why we split the living one?
It's not clear who's at fault.
Well, let's assume. What do you mean?
Clear.
Your ox gored my ox.
No, but
So
it's not
whose
clear
fault is
that-
it?
It's not clear who's at fault. You don't know what happened. You know,
You're
my
saying-
child beat up your child. It doesn't mean you don't know.
You're saying
whose
we have
fault
to
it
know
is.
the situation.
You don't know.
Where
the
was
situation.
it?
It's a lot easier to have it this way, where you say, let's just split the difference. I don't know whose fault it is. I don't know. Nobody's fault.
No, but I'm the one losing out. It's not like. I mean, meaning
Yeah, why?
I'm the
why,
one. Huh?
why you're entitled? No, that the way. Why? I'm responsible. My shore killed your shore.
Okay.
I'm responsible for half of your shore. Why you
What?
having anything to do with my shore, living one?
How do you know who started this?
Well,
Yes.
we're assuming that the one that gored is at fault. What do you assume? You're saying maybe what? Maybe my cow instigated your cow and
Correct.
insulted him
You
and
want
called
to
him a name.
call him names?
it's the assumption is that we'll see if obviously if there are other circumstances over here, and you're saying no, it's not my cow's fault.
There's
It's
no
your
such
cow's
thing
fault.
as an animal's responsibility. There's a human responsibility. Don't hold animals
No, but I am responsible for what my animal does. If my animal damages your property, I'm responsible. And that's exactly what this pasuk is saying, is that it's not just me who damages is responsible. If I damage a person or property, it's even if my property damages, because I have a certain obligation to watch my own property, right? It's like saying, oh, I let go of the brake and it crashed into your car. Oh, it's not my fault, it's the car's fault, right? No, you're the one manning the car, right? So too, you're not manning your animal, right? But you have a certain responsibility for your animal. However, the chiddush, the interesting thing the Torah says is that because it's a regular animal and it's not expected for it to just go damage other animals, you're not responsible for the whole damage. You're only responsible for half the damage. Because it's something that wasn't so expected. We'll see.
It's like an accident.
That part is fine with me. The part why the owner, why have my shore killed your shore.
Right.
I'm responsible for half of your shore, right?
Right.
Why
Only for half the
I have to
damage.
give
Right.
you half of my.
Oh, okay. So this is a special din that the Torah teaches us is that you only have to pay from your animal. Let's say your animal. Let's say the animal that got damaged is a stud racehorse or something that's worth tons of money, right? That's
$1,000.
$1,000. Let's give it $1,000. My cow is $100. $100, right? So, are you going to say I'm responsible for half the damages? I have to pay $500?
Yeah.
No. The Torah says you don't pay $500. You only pay the chatzin, as you only pay the damages from the actual cow that you have. And this is what we learn from this pasuk. We'll see later on. You don't have to pay, right, more than what your animal is worth. Okay, that's another halacha that has to do with this shor, right? Again, all this is going to be under the category of shor, right? And this is what we learn from this pasuk.
But why can't they say that it was an accident and I used to have two alive fools? One was $1,000, one was $100, but you don't have this anymore. Then what's left of it, you kind of split in the middle, and this way, it's almost like fair. You know, there's a concept of fairness when you split everything in the middle.
Yeah, no, but you're still assuming that we don't know who's responsible. I know my cow was the one that's everyone knows my cow is the one that's responsible. Your cow was sitting there doing nothing, and then my cow came and gored it, right? So we would assume that my cow is the one that's responsible, right?
And the most you can take from my cow is half of my cow. Meaning, if I had a $100 cow, the most you can get is half of my cow. You cannot ask me to pay $1,000.
Right, exactly.
I don't have $1,000.
That's what we're saying.
I have to pay your shield tuition. I can't like.
Well, I don't know.
No.
I don't know. I don't know how much it makes sense. Yeah, we have to see what the Gemara says. It doesn't make sense that it depends on how much my cow is worth. That's how much I should pay. Why don't we say that you just have to pay for half the damages? Right? Why does it depend on how much my cow is worth? Right? But you see the Torah does limit it. The Torah is limiting how much I have to pay per cow. And what the Torah is saying here, what the simple understanding of the verse is like this, is that I take half of my cow, and I think because the Torah is talking about a case where both cows are equal. Both cows are equal in value. Right? So imagine 200 and 200. Right? Now my cow gores your cow and it's dead. Now it's worth, let's say, it goes down all the way to the carcass is worth $20, let's just say. So it goes down from 200 to 20. What do? I'm only responsible for half the damages, right? So what do I say? I say, you take half of my cow, we'll sell my cow, you take half of my cow, so you get 100, right? And then you give me half of the dead carcass, right? And in that way, I paid, right, for half. Right, because the damages weren't exactly 200. The damage was really 180, right? So therefore, I gave you 100, but you give me back 10, right? You give me back the half of the dead carcass, which is worth 10. So now I get, right? I really only paid you 90, right? So we split the damages, right? And that's just the case that the Torah happens to be talking about. But the way we make this into law is we say in general you have to pay only half the damages. And the half of those damages have to come only from the cow that gored. You have to dip into your pocket. You don't dip into your other assets in order to pay back. Why? Because this is a special halacha that has to do with this type of cow, which is a normal cow. It was a regular nice cow, right? And whatever, ox, and it wasn't meant to gore, it wasn't expected for it to gore, and therefore we give you these deductions. We say, don't worry, you don't have to pay so much.
It's still treated as an accident.
Yeah. Because the guy sort of says, look, I didn't have to have all these precautions to watch it. It was a nice cow. Why all of a sudden it was a nice ox? Why all of a sudden did it go and gore? Right? Let's just read the next pasuk and then we'll discuss it more. Continues the pasuk. Oh no da. Or if it was known, kishar nagachu mitmol shasham. Right? That the ox was in the habit of goring, right, from yesterday or the day before. And then what happened was the owner was negligent and he didn't watch it. He has to pay the full ox in lieu of the ox that he damaged. And then the carcass you could keep. Okay? So what are we saying over here? We're saying that if it's an animal that was expected, was in the habit of goring already, so then all these deductions, all these stipulations, they go away. You have to pay the entire thing, and we don't necessarily care also where the money's coming from, right? As it can, you have to dip into your pocket, you have to pay for the whole thing, right? So now we could discuss a little bit what Lenny was trying to get to is sort of, and this is discussed by the commentators, what exactly obligates you when you what exactly obligates you to pay for your cow's damages?
Negligence.
Is it the negligence that you didn't watch? Is it that I didn't watch it, and since I should have watched it and I didn't watch it, right? Therefore, I'm responsible and I must pay. Or it's much simpler. It's not because I should have watched it and I didn't watch it, and therefore I should. No. It's because it's my money. It's my possession, and just like if I damage something, it's my fault. I'm responsible to pay. So too, if the extension of me, my possession hits, it's also responsible to pay. Not because it's not, you're right that it has to do with me watching it and I have to watch it, right? But is it because of my negligence that I didn't watch it? Is that what's causing me to pay? Is that the reason why I'm chayiv to pay? I'm obligated to pay because it was my fault because I didn't watch it. Because it's my fault, therefore I have to pay. Or no, it's not because it's my fault. No, it's the extension of you. You damaged. Your animal is like you. It's your possession, so therefore it damaged.
Not really. That's when the price of your cow kicks in the first case. And you cannot pay more than it costs. So it's the responsibility, so to say, is on the cow, not on you. Even though you own it, but it says its value. You cannot pay more than its value. So
you're saying in that situation when it wasn't a cow that was meant or in the habit of goring, right? So therefore it's not so much my responsibility. It's just left to the cow, and sort of left.
You still lose the money
left to nature. It's your money, right? But it's like sort of left to nature, and the natural law is that whatever damage should repay. So therefore, you have to take the money only from the actual cow.
The same thing as in a previous posuk where the man dies.
Right.
Right. You're not responsible in the second case.
Right.
In the first case, when it's a regular cow, you're not responsible.
You're not responsible at all, right.
So the same thing.
Right, it's a similar thing.
Responsibility is, here it's monetary responsibility, there is the life responsibility.
Right. Okay, so it's very interesting, very good, right? So but that's one of the discussions that they have, and they find different consequential differences. Is it that how do we look at it? Is it because I was negligent and didn't watch it, therefore I'm responsible? Right? Let's say I did keep it behind bars. Right, I really watched it, and I put my animal, behind bars, and everything was locked, and somehow it got out because of some crazy lightning bolt struck and ripped the gate apart, and it got out. Am I still responsible, or am I not responsible? Right. If it's because I was negligent and because I didn't watch it properly, therefore I'm responsible. Right. So if we say, what do you mean I didn't watch it properly? I put all the barns and all the gates and all the locks in place. A lightning bolt came from heaven and destroyed the whole thing. Well, I'm supposed to expect that? I wasn't negligent, right? Am I still responsible? We say yes. Some might say yes, you are still responsible. It's not about you watching it. It's not because, oh, I fulfilled my duty of watching it, right? Since I fulfilled my duty of watching it, I am exempt. No, you're not exempt. It's your cow. Pay for it. It's your possession. You're responsible. You're responsible for the damages that it incurs, right? So from the pasuk, it does seem that it has to do with, oh, this one you don't have to watch so much because it's not in the habit of goring. It's called a tam. It's a simple cow. It's a nice cow. The muad, the one that's in the habit of goring, that you have to pay for. Why? Because you have to watch it more and you are more negligent, right? It does seem that it's a little bit dependent on the cow. All right, on how much you have to watch it. Okay, so let's just recap. We had 2 paragraphs in Parshas Mishpatim that talked about Shor, the ox. One, the ox that gored a person, and the second was an ox that gored another ox, right? In both instances, the pasuk made a differentiation between the tam and the muad, right? Okay. Then we had another pasuk that talked about bar, right? We saw bar. We saw the case of a pit, right? Which we discussed last week is different because the bar doesn't go anywhere. The bar doesn't travel. The bar stays in place. Now, let's see the last 2 key on pasuk 22:4. Right, let's go chapter 22, pasuk 4. Now again, we're gonna go to the Gemara in a second, but it's very important to know these psukim. The Gemara is going to quote all these psukim. Okay, so you have it, chapter 22, pasuk 4. Okay, ki yav'er ish sadeh kerem. If a man will be mav'er. What does the word mav'er mean? Right? So sometimes ba'er means to eat, to destroy, to consume. Right? But over here, the simple understanding of the verse is that the word ba'er over here is an animal. Be'iro is a person's animal. Okay, so ki yav'er ish. If someone will animal is field or kerem. What does that mean? Animal is not a verb, but it's used here as a verb. The word animal is used sort of as a verb. If you let your animal be an animal, if you just let your animal be an animal, meaning you don't watch it at all in a field or a vineyard. You send out your animal, and it consumes, it grazes in a different field. You have to pay, you have to compensate from the best of your field, from the best of your vineyards. You have to compensate what happened. So basically, this verse, right, the way Sefaria translates it is when a man lets his livestock loose to graze in another's land, and so allows a field or a vineyard to be grazed bare, he must make restitution for the impairment of that field or vineyard, right? So what we're saying over here is not what we discussed when your animal's goring, and it's not a pit, right? What is this? This is also an animal, right? But it's my animal that I let graze, right?
On somebody else's property.
I let graze on someone else's property, right? That's not like a damage, right? Over here, there's no discussion of, oh, is it a simple cow or a cow that's prone in the habit of doing it? No, every cow is in the habit of eating grass, right? So it's your negligence for letting the cow go. You are responsible now. Now there's no difference between whether it's a tam, whether it's a muad. And this is what we called, last week we called it shen, tooth, right? We said the tooth, the shen, right? There was shor, bor, mavir, and hever, right? So this is mavir, which is shen, right? And another thing the Gemara will learn from this is regel. Regel is a similar thing. Yeah, it got pretty warm. We don't need it anymore. Okay, so we discussed last week that shor, right, is really comprised of three different subcategories. There's shor, there's keren, which is when he gores, right? There's shein and regel. Shen is when the animal eats, and regel is when the animal is not intending to damage, right? He's not eating, but it happens to be when he passes by something, he steps on something by mistake, he cracks something, he breaks something, right? That we also learn from this pasuk here, in the Gemara. And now the last one, the next pasuk, is the last type of nezek, is kitetze esh. If fire goes out and it finds thorns, V'nechal gadish, and it consumes a vineyard, or akama, or standing grain, or sadeh, or field, shalem, yishalem, hamavir tabera. The person who lit the fire is responsible. Now over here, the Mishnah said that it's not like your cow, which is a living thing, right? The fire needs wind, it needs something to stir it. So it's not just the actual action that you did. I lit the fire, I'm responsible. It's not so simple. It's an extension. It is an extension, but it's not a living thing. It needed the wind. The wind is what moves the fire and consumes other things. So yes, I'm responsible for that too. And that becomes another category of damages. Okay? So I wanted to show you these psukim because the Gemara is not going to quote this all the time. All this psukim. But this is where you see how Chazal took apart this parsha and categorized it into four different main types of damages. Now, for example, right, not only did we already see the differences of when, like only by Karen, only by a goring ox or a damaging ox do we say the differences of tam and muad apply. Right? Hi, how are you, Jerry? Not only over there, but also by right. That's only by Karen. By Shen and Regel, that won't apply. Right? So we already see certain differences that make it important to know which category you're part of. If you're a damager, so then we say, first of all, you only have to pay half, right? By regular Shen v'Regel, you don't pay half. You have to pay for all the damages, right? Because it's expected. Only by damage, by an angry ox that is not considered expected, only then do we give you the deduction and we say you only have to pay half, right? However, if it's something that's expected because we know that this animal has done it before, so therefore you are responsible for the full thing, right? So Karen becomes Karen, which means a horn. When the ox gores, that becomes its own category. Another difference would be, for example, if an ox gores in the owner's property, so then it's exempt. It's not responsible.
In the owner's property. What are ox doing in your property?
Mm-hmm. So it got there somehow. It went in. Its own owner was negligent and got into your property, right? So therefore I'm not responsible. Yes, I have a damaging ox in my yard, right?
Yeah.
I have a pit bull.
Somebody visited you.
And then you let your puppy in. But you let your puppy in. No, I'm not responsible. Right? It's in my place, right? So then you are considered exempt. In Reshut HaRabim, right? Let's say in public property, right? My ox goes and gores. It's responsible, right? I'm responsible, right? We have to pay. How about if my ox sees fruit that you left in public property, right, in the middle of the street, and it eats the apples? Who's responsible? I'm not responsible. You left it there in the middle of the street. What are you expecting? That he's not going to eat it? Right? So therefore, I'm exempt. And only if my ox goes into your field and eats, right, then I'm responsible. Right? So depending on which category we're talking about, are we talking about Shen, meaning when the animal actually benefits, and it's a regular way of the animal benefiting and therefore causing a deficiency for the person who lost the fruit, right? So then it depends where are you? If you're in public property, public thoroughfare, so then it's your problem. Would you leave your fruit out there, right? But if you're discussing the damages of an ox goring, right? So then even in public property, that's a problem. You got to watch your ox even in public property, right? Okay, so that's another difference. That's why these categories are so important, because it's gonna make a big difference. Okay, now let's jump back to the Gemara. I'm gonna pull it up over here. Hold on.
Page.
2b. We're going to jump back to 2b. Talmud. Bava Kama. Here we go. Okay, Tana Rabbana. Okay, now we went through a lot of what we said, so I'm going to read it quickly because I just gave a sufficient introduction. Gimel Avot Nemru Bishar. There are three categories, primary categories of damages that are said by an ox, that were told us by an ox. HaKaren, which is the horn, Hashen, the tooth, and the regel. Right, which is, we explained, the Karen is when it gores, Shen is when it eats and it has pleasure, regel is when it just damages with its foot in a normal way. Karen Minalan, how do you know the concept of Karen? Ditan Rabbanu, we just read the pasuk, Ki Yigach. Ki Yigach Shor. When a...
Where in Gimel?
No, Bet Amud Bet. No.
Bet. Okay.
Bet. Tanu Rabbanan. No, you're going too far. You're right.
Okay.
Right? Right? There are three types of damages that happen by a shor. A Karen, Vashen, Varegel. Karen is when it gores, Shen is when it eats, and regel is when it damages by trampling, regularly, a regular type of damage that an ox might cause. Karen Minal, and how do you know the concept of Karen? They're responsible if your cow gores something with its horns, with its Karen. The Tan Rabbanan, you learned in the Braita. Ki Yigach. The pasuk says Ki Yigach. Right? That's the first pasuk we start with. The concept of negicha means goring. It means goring. How do you know it means goring? Right? Goring is only goring means with your horns. Shenemar, like it says in the pasuk. Vayas lo Tzidkiyahu ben Knana. It says about a story in Sefer Melachim. It says that Tzidkiyahu ben Knana made horns of metal, karnei barzel. Right? He made horns made out of metal, but I guess like one of those Viking hats, right? Vayomer ko amar Hashem. So God said, with these, it was a symbolic action to show that with these horns, God is going to gore and beat up Aram, right? Which is a nation. Okay, so what do you see? You see that with Karen, with a horn, you do nagach, right? You see that the word Karen and nagach are used together. Right, so you see that when we have the shoresh of nagach, it means with a horn, so it means goring. V'omer, another pasuk which we just read, Bechor Shoroh Hadallah is talking about Yosef, right? That the firstborn ox with his glory, the karnei re'em karnav, right, and the horns of a re'em, of a ram, of a wild ox, whatever the type of animal the re'em is, but karnei re'em karnav bahem amim minagach. With those horns, he will be minagach. So over here, these psukim are just being brought here as a textual proof to try to define from context what the word nagach means. And you see that it's always associated with the horns. So you see, when we bring it back to Parshas Mishpatim, ki yigach, it means when an animal gores with its horns. Right? And again, our understanding is that when it gores with its horn, it's doing it to damage. It's something that the ox is angry. It's not a normal type of a damage that an ox might cause. My Ve'omer, why do we need the second pasuk? Why did you have to say another verse? Why do we have to bring two verses? Maybe you'll tell me because the first verse you brought was from the Nevi'im, from Divrei Kabbalah. Divrei Kabbalah means from the words of the prophet. Words of the prophets. There's nothing to do with the Kabbalah, mystical Judaism. That's not Divrei Kabbalah just means the tradition of the prophets. We don't learn anything from the traditions we don't learn anything from the prophets. If we're trying to shed light onto a verse from the Torah, don't bring me a proof from the prophets. Tashema, therefore you'll come and hear the second pasuk, B'chor Shoroh Hadallah, which is from the Torah itself, so it's not from the prophets. Says, well, that can't be a possibility. What I'm trying to learn is nothing of content. I'm not trying to learn something from the prophets onto the Torah. I'm just trying to learn a textual thing. It's just to reveal to me what the word means, to define the word nagach. So why can't I learn it from the right? Why can't I learn it from the context of how it's used in the books of the prophets, in the Nevi'im, and Sefer Melachim, right? There's no problem. I can bring a proof to the Hebrew language from any book in Tanakh. It doesn't have to be only from the Torah, right? So, right? Gilu Milsa Ba'almu, all it is to reveal to me what the word means. The Negicha Begerim, the Negicha means with the horn. El Gemara says the reason why I need to psukim is Ma'od Tema Kipalig Rachmana Bein Tam Namuad, Hanimilu B'Tlusha. When does the Torah, I would think, when does the Torah make a distinction between whether it's a simple, innocuous tam, right? An ox that wasn't considered dangerous, and a muad, right? One that was warned. Hanimili, that's only, I would think, bitlusha. right? I would think that it's only in this crazy case if an ox is holding a horn in its mouth. Somehow got a hold of a horn from another cow that was detached. It's in its mouth and it damaged something. Right? That's a very weird way for an ox to damage. Right? It's damaging with the horn, but it's a horn that was detached from another ox. He put it into this. It got into its mouth, and now it damages in that way. Right? Now the Gemara knows this is a little bit of a crazy case, right? But the reason why we're pointing this out is because you might think that the only time the Torah will exempt you and say you only have to pay for half the damages because it was such a crazy case. It's only in that situation. You might say that because which verse did I bring you a proof from to teach me what the word nagach means, that it means with a Karen? From the case when he had, what did the guy do? The guy Tzidkiyahu ben Knana, what did he do? He took horns from a cow. He took horns and he put them on his head. Right? He made a cap. He made a cap out of it, like the Vikings. Oh, that's detached. That means he detached. It's not attached to the cow. It's a detached horns, right? That's when it's called. That's when you have the word negicha. So maybe negicha also by us means when it's detached. That's why the pasuk. That's why the Gemara says the second pasuk. No. Look from the pasuk of in Parshas Mishpatim when it talks about Yosef over there. It says b'chor shora hadula of an ox. Over there it calls it an ox. It says we know it's an ox. And it uses the word Karen, and it uses the word Nagach, so we know that no. It means a live ox and the regular horns, and when the ox gores with its regular horns, that's what the pasuk is talking about. That's what Negicha means, right? And now the pasuk is saying that if it's a tam, it's exempt for half the damages, and if it's a muad, it's responsible for the whole thing. Okay.
But it could be also detached. It doesn't have to be attached.
Right. So that would be an extension, right? Or it's just like when the horns are attached, right? If it damages, it's responsible.
So the first posuk actually gives you an idea that even if it's detached, it's still
Right, you can still learn from that. It's still called Negicha, right? Okay. Tolad the Karen, right? Remember last week we talked that there are the primary categories and the subcategories, right? So now what the Gemara wants to know, what is going to be a subcategory of Karen, right? So the pasuk talked about the primary category, which is when an ox actually gores and causes damages with its horns. What's an extension of that? Says the Gemara, Negifa, Neshicha, Revitza, Ubeita. Negifa means if it just pushes it, right? Let's say the ox pushes because it pushes with its shoulder or something, right? Because it's angry. Or Neshicha, or it bites something. Revitza is if it squashes something, if it crouches on it and squashes it and causes damage to Ubeita or kicking, right? So all these things are, right? What is the commonality between all these things? That the animal is not gaining anything normal. It's not, right? It's not eating. It's not getting pleasure from doing this.
What is squatting?
The animal squats. It crouches.
This is a way to
Mhm.
the other animal. How do you squat to the other animal?
Right. Yeah. Let's say it sits on it.
The animals do that?
Let's say it does. I guess. Yeah. It's not only on another animal. It's on anything really. Right. Let's say it crouches the way it sees it's angry at my beautiful pot, my beautiful ceramic dish, and it's red and gets angry at it, so it smashes it, whatever. But it smashes it through crouching, through squatting on it. Yeah, that's what it means. Uveita or kicking, right? So all these things are pure damage, right? It's the animal's not getting any regular benefit from it.
It's
not getting any
on a
benefit.
chair, and chair breaks down. Right? The same thing, squatting from a chair.
Yeah, but it has to be. It's doing it. It's not just an accident. Like it's not just being a bumbling cow. And right, okay, fine.
He's doing it purposefully.
Right,
Doing
purpose.
it on
Very,
purpose.
right. We'll see. The Gemara actually also is going to give a little bit of a definition for us too later on. Okay. Now, Maishna Negicha Dekarli Av. The Gemara wants to know, why is Negicha called an Av? Why are you calling that the primary category when it gores with its horns? Diktiv, why? Because it says in the pasuk ki yigach, right? It says ki yigach, right? And that's what it says in the pasuk. So therefore, that's going to be the primary category. That's why he made it to the Mishnah, right? And the other ones are only a subcategory. The Gemara says no, negifa namiksiv. It also says negifa, right? Because it says ki yigaf. We read the pasuk ki yigaf, right? It also says ki yigaf. When we're talking about a shor, it says both the pasuk ki yigach and ki yigof. Gemara says no. That type of pushing that we said over there, it didn't really mean just pushing. It meant pushing with the horns, and it really meant horns. The Tanya, patach benegifa v'siyem benegicha. It started with negifa and ended with negicha. Lomar, to tell you, zui negifa, that really we meant pushing with horns. If you look at the pasuk, it says it starts off with negifa, and then describing the same action, it uses negicha. So obviously, it really means the same thing. Now, ma'ishna gabe adam. Now, the Gemara asks the question that if you look back at the pasuk, right? If you look back at the pasuk, in the first one where we discussed the axe goring a man, right? That it said the word ki yigach, and then the next one when it discussed the axe goring another axe, it said ki yigof, right? We defined ki. You're right. We defined ki yigof, and we explained that it really means the same thing. It means goring, just like ki yigach with horns. Right, but still, the Gemara wants to know, why is there a discrepancy in the terminology that the Torah uses? Why does the first time it say ki yigach and the second time it says ki yigof? We know that they both mean goring. So then, why does the Torah use the term pushing for when the animal damages another animal? Ma'ishna gabe adam diksiv ki yigach, ma'ishna gabe behema diksiv ki yigof. Says the Gemara, adam disli mazala, a person that has luck. Ksiv ki yigach. Behema de lesle mazola ksiv ki yigof.
Luck?
What does it mean, luck? They explain it means it has ingenuity, meaning a person is able to run away. A person can run away from an ox, right? So therefore, whatever, he's smarter. Since he has the intelligence, he could run away. Therefore, the only type of ox that he'll be damaged by is if an ox is very deliberate and very strong, and that's why it uses the stronger terminology of actual goring, right? So why? Because you need something stronger. You need a stronger intent from the animal in order to gore a person, because the person's standing right there, right, and he should be able to run away because the person has ingenuity. They say, right? Let me just see what Rashi says here. Yeah, Rashi says again, he has intelligence. The person sees the cow coming, he could run away. He understands what's going on. Therefore, you need a much stronger push by the cow, by the ox, to get damaged. Therefore, it's a stronger lashon of ki yigach. But when it's damaging an animal, behemoth less than mazol, doesn't have brains, right? So therefore, ksiv ki yigof. It says just pushing, because even a small push could damage it. Okay. Another thing. A side thing that this teaches us is that the muad la'adam have a muad la'behema, that because we just established, right, that it's harder to damage a person than to damage an animal, right? It requires more focus and more strength and more brutishness from the animal to damage a person, because a person has intelligence, he can escape, right? And animals don't have such intelligence, they won't escape necessarily. So therefore, what it takes from an animal to damage a person is much higher, right? Okay, so now we learn from here the muad la'adam have a muad la'behema. If someone is if an ox is considered warned in terms of damaging a person, right? We said that if an animal is a muad, which means he was already forewarned, right? He was warned from before, because we know that he gored a bunch of times yesterday and the day before. He already gored, right? Now you're more responsible, right? Let's say, right, this ox gored only animals before, right? And now the third time, it gores a person, right? Is it considered forewarned? No, it's not considered right? What are we saying? We're saying that there's a difference between a simple innocuous ox, an ox that's a tam, that he was a nice, simple, non-violent ox. Why should I think that he's going to damage, right? So therefore, I have the leniencies and I'm not so responsible, right? However, if it's an ox that has gored before, then your responsibility to watch him goes up higher, and you're responsible for the whole thing, right? Now, what does it mean for an ox? How exactly does this ox get to be that status of forewarned, of muad, right? So we'll see. He has to have gored twice or three times, right? And then we establish, okay, this ox is something very dangerous, right? And yeah, I gotta be careful with him more.
Next people.
Huh?
He has to attack people, or could be.
Oh, so let's say he has only attacked animals, and now he attacks a person. Is he considered? No, he's considered a muad because he attacked animals before. So we would think it's two separate tracks. No, if you already attacked animals, then we have to assume you might attack another animal. But if just because you attacked animals doesn't mean necessarily attacked humans, right? Because we just said that humans are harder to attack, right? Because humans are more intelligent and therefore requires more effort on the cow's part to attack a human, right? So therefore,
You have an aggressive tendency.
yeah, but the aggressive tendency that you've shown, Mr. Cow, right, Mr. Ox, is not on the level to that we necessarily should assume that you can even attack a person. It's much harder to attack a person because the person has intelligence. So therefore, just because you showed that Mr. Ox that you're aggressive enough to attack a cow, to attack other cows, right? But your owner is not yet responsible to assume that you'll even attack a human because you haven't showed that level of aggressiveness.
But he is a moed for other animals.
Right.
He's a moed. He's considered a moed for other animals.
Exactly. So, but we're from the fact that the Gemara shows a much more the Gemara is pointing out the fact that the Torah used a much more aggressive term. The word used when the Torah describes the case of an ox goring a human is much more of an aggressive word, negicha, right?
Right.
So therefore, we see that requires a much more aggressive action on the part of the ox, right? And therefore, right, if it's only muad lebehema, if the animal is only known to be aggressive enough to gore cows, we don't necessarily assume that it's going to be aggressive enough to attack humans, and therefore it's not considered forewarned regarding that. Okay.
Yes.
Let's just learn a little more because I want.
Is Yehuda starting?
Huh?
Or he's done?
I think he would come up here. I just want to do a few more lines because the Gemara's.
Back classes today.
Huh?
Back classes today.
Maybe, I'm not sure. No, Yehuda. Yehuda might be giving it a few minutes now. Yeah, two more lines. Nishicha told the Sheni. So asks the Gemara, Nishicha, when we just said that when the animal bites, that's Karen. That's like he's goring. What do you mean? The Gemara says, no, biting is a told the Shane. That's like, what do you mean? When he eats, just like when he eats fruit, right? So he's biting, right? So isn't biting a subcategory of Shane? The Gemara says, no, look, Shane yeshana. Lazika, right? When is something under Shane if it has benefit? Like when it eats and it has benefit. The type of biting we're discussing now, when it bites it just to damage and it's not getting any benefit. Revitza uvi'ita, says the Gemara, crouching and kicking should also be, they shouldn't be considered under the category of Karen of goring. It's a tolada de regel, right? Be'ita kicking, isn't it regel? It's with the foot. The Gemara says no. Look, regel hizika matsui. The type of damages that are included in regel is something that it's normal damage. It's something that's common for the animal to damage in that way. Hani ein hazekan matsui. These that are included in Karen, like a kick, right? It's a kick that the animal does it with intention. It's trying to damage, right? And crouching also to damage. That is not considered. That is not considered to be part of regel. It's part of Karen. Ella told the saying lav behen. Right. So now, if you remember last week, we had a discussion. Rav Papa wanted to know, right? We wanted to know whether the subcategories have the same exact law as the actual categories, right? We said that Shabbos, it's the same, right? The toldos and the avos and Shabbos are equal. In Tumah, the toldos and avos are not equal. How about over here? So Rav Papa said, well, sometimes it's equal and sometimes it's not equal. So the Gemara says, well, Allah told the same lav kayotze behen. When Rav Papa said that the subcategories are not equal to the main categories, right? The Rav Papa said that there's some times when the subcategories aren't equal to the main categories, right? So, what's it going on? Ilay Mahani, if it's going on these subcategories, Maishna Karen the Kavanos Lahazik. What's the difference between regular Karen, when your animal gores, that its intent is to be mazik, and it's your money, and you are responsible to watch it, right? So haninami, so do kavanas and lahazik, in all these things, when an animal bites, and when he kicks, and when he crouches, right, and when he pushes, the intent of the animal is to damage, and it's your money, and you're responsible to watch it, right? So it should be the same exact halacha. So it must be the same exact halacha. Ella, the Gemara says, you're right. Told it to Karen ki Karen. Really, the subcategory of Karen is exactly like Karen. There is no difference. The Chika Amar of Papa, when did Rav Papa say that there is going to be a discrepancy between the category and the subcategory? That's a Shein V'Regel. That's going to be on the other ones on Shein V'Regel, and that we'll see next time. Okay? That we're going to start next time. Okay, thank you guys so much.
What?
Cool.
Ashkor.
You were doing pre-reading before the class?